2 days ago, Gooseworks posted a post with the final of the second episode of the amazing digital circus. From this, I concluded that Zooble or Jax will be abstract in the new episode. You may ask why this will be the case, but today I will show you the official information from the developers. Just 2 days ago, Gooseworks on their official Twitter account published two interesting posts that didn't have any captions. They were just pictures, but they had some interesting details in them. Also, somewhere in the video, I hide a picture of Kinger, and anyone who finds it will get the secret info on the second episode of the amazing digital circus. So, if we look at the first post, we see the following. We have 5 main characters in front of us, and they look pretty weird. Ragatha, Gangle, Pomni, and Kinger, judging by their facial expressions, are worried about something, while Jax is sitting quite contentedly. But why are there of characters here and not 6? That's right, this drawing is missing Zooble. So why is that, and where could she have gone? Many comments have been left under this post about Zooble being missing, but Gooseworks herself hasn't commented on this post at all and hasn't written anything in the comments. I have a theory on the matter that either Gooseworks is purposely messing with us, or this is indeed a new spoiler for the second episode of the amazing digital circus. Judging by Gooseworks' early comments and posts, when asked what the second episode would be about, she said it would be about depression, and in one way, Zooble fits that category. And if we remember that she didn't want to participate in the mission from Kane, she doesn't understand who she is and why she's here, then depression could be related to her. But there is also interesting information regarding the fact that the third episode of the amazing digital circus is supposed to be about Zooble. Gooseworks wrote about that somewhere too. So which of all of this is true? In my past video, I showed and told you why Gooseworks can sometimes tell us things that aren't true. And based on all the posts that the writers have published on the topic of episode 2, this all information might not be true. And then we will be very surprised when episode 2 comes out, because it won't be everything as we expected. However, out of all this information, there might be a partial truth. There were no statements from the writers on this post, which was published 2 days ago, so it could have been created for fan discussion, although the abstraction option with Zooble could be quite likely. However, I found another interesting piece of information. Remember the post with Pain, the very brother of Kane, who was a Gooseworks drawing? Sometime later, the Gooseworks account published already his model, and I found another very interesting similarity. Remember the pre-final scene of the pilot, when all the characters are sitting at the table? Their sequence was Ragatha, Kinger, Gangle, Pomni, Jax, and Zooble. And in this post, we see the exact same sequence, only instead of Zooble, Kinger is sitting there, and the picture pretty much fits together. Look at the fact that even the very emotions of the characters are similar. The facial expressions are exactly the same in the finale of the first episode as they are in this picture. It is likely that every episode of the amazing digital circus will end with the characters sitting around a table with digital food. Could this mean that theoretically the developers are starting to give us spoilers, which means episode 2 is on its way? I think so, because as the writers promised us, the second episode of the amazing digital circus is due out in early 2024, and it's already February, so either the trailer or the episode itself should already be out this month. But we wouldn't mind if it all came out at the same time. But what about Jax? What could be wrong with him if he seems to be sitting at this table, and he doesn't really seem to fit depression? But just after the first post from Gooseworks, there was a separate post with Jax. This is what he looks like, but you might ask, what's so unusual about that? But what if I told you it could be the first stage of abstraction? I recently showed concepts for new characters, but they also showed sketches of several stages of abstraction. Again, I noticed the similarities between the faces. The face of the abstracted character and Jax's face in this drawing. Immediately, what surprised me was the almost identical eye placement. Also, we probably don't know yet how character transformation happened. And maybe before turning into an abstracted character, the character starts to take off, like in this drawing. Also, in another one of the developers' posts, we see a black hair, and as we know, the color of abstraction is black. Also, for some reason, the hair and its concepts are placed next to the abstracted figure, which also raises some questions. Also, Gooseworks had a post about Jax, which is probably a fan post, but that could also be a reference to our situation. Because Gooseworks is kind of joking about wanting to shoot Jax's toy, but it could also somehow affect the show, because we don't know what Gooseworks has in store for us. And she's the one who wrote the plot for the entire first episode. Judging by the abstraction theory that one character is replaced by another, I have an interesting theory about Jax's evil sister. Again, if you go back to Gooseworks' Twitter account, she's been publishing a few posts on the subject. One of the posts was just a concept of Jax's evil sister, but the second post, which had as many as 3 drawings, had a more lifelike and painted Jax's sister. Also, Gooseworks has a lot of Jax-related posts on Twitter, but it's understandable because he is one of the most popular characters. And if we take it as a fact that Gooseworks does make jokes sometimes, then I think that all the information in these posts is really not true. Oh, and also, in the new teaser from the developers, we saw Pomni, Jax, and Regatha, and I have formed a theory that these will be the characters that will go through an amazing digital circus. So personally, I believe that Jax will not be removed from the amazing digital circus anytime soon. Firstly, because he is one of the most beloved characters, and secondly, he most likely makes a lot of money for Glitch because they sell plush toys of the amazing digital circus. Also, there are a lot of fan posts with Jax, and he's very popular with fans of the amazing digital circus. And speaking of abstracting, I think Jax will be one of the very last to abstract, or not abstract at all. Now it's worth dissecting the subject of the finale of the second episode of the amazing digital circus in more detail. As I said earlier, it will most likely end the same way as the first episode, at the table. But what might happen before the finale, and why Zooble won't appear in it after all? I have this theory that Zooble might just stay in his room and not show up for the final scene. And in the third episode, we'll learn the stages of abstraction from Zooble's example, because if she doesn't leave the room, she might abstract like Kaufmo. Oh, and besides, if the developers have told us that the third episode of the amazing digital circus will be about Zooble, that could very well be the case. But one thing I'm curious about, Gooseworks has said that Zooble is her favorite character, and indeed, they even resemble her characters, and her avatar looks like Zooble too. And why would Gooseworks be removing Zooble? Did she really see her character as a defeat? Even though Zooble is Gooseworks' favorite character, I think there is a possibility that the author will remove Zooble. Accordingly, this then explains the finale of the third episode of the amazing digital circus. However, I think it's more likely that either Kinger or Regatha is abstracted in the second episode, because they have a good chance of doing so. By the way, we can still consider the fact, as Gooseworks said, there will be a new character in the new episode that we haven't met yet. But whether this is true is still unknown. On one side, we have concepts of new characters from both developers and fan accounts. And we can find a replacement for any character, but it's not certain that the developers will still add a new character or that someone will still be abstracted in the new episode. What theories do you have about the finale of the second episode of the amazing digital circus? What do you think about the information the developers are giving us, and should we believe them? Be sure to write your opinion in the comments. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Good luck to everyone, and bye-bye.